In 325 AD, a room full of men voted on who Jesus was. Not who he taught, not what he said, who he was. Divine? Human? Both? Neither? They voted. And the losing side was declared heresy. The man who called that meeting, who chose the location, set the agenda, and sat at the head of the table, was not a priest, not a bishop, not a theologian. He was a Roman emperor who worshipped the sun.
His full name was Flavius Valerius Constantinus. We know him as Constantine the Great, and the word great is doing a lot of work there, because depending on who you ask, he is either the man who saved Christianity or the man who hijacked it. And I think both of those things can be true at the same time.
Here is what the history books agree on. Constantine was born around 272 AD in what is now modern-day Serbia. His father was a Roman general. His mother, Helena, was a Christian. That detail about Helena matters. We'll come back to it. Constantine rose through the military ranks the way Roman emperors did in the 3rd century, not through inheritance, through war, through killing the right people at the right time. By 306 AD, he was proclaimed emperor by his troops, but the Roman Empire at this point had a problem it couldn't solve. It was too big, too fractured, too many generals with too many armies in too many provinces, all believing they had a claim to the throne. Constantine spent the next 6 years fighting his way to sole power, and in 312 AD, at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, he fought the battle that changed everything. The night before that battle, Constantine claims he saw a vision, a cross of light in the sky, and with it, words. In this sign, conquer. Now, here is where it gets interesting, because Constantine told this story himself, about himself, and the version he told changed depending on who he was talking to and what he needed from them. In some versions, it was a dream. In some, a vision in the sky. In some, Christ appeared directly. In some, the sun god Apollo appeared. The sun god. The same deity Constantine had been publicly devoted to for his entire career. Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Constantine minted coins with Sol Invictus on them for years after his supposed conversion to Christianity. He kept the title Pontifex Maximus, high priest of the Roman pagan religion, until his death. He wasn't baptized as a Christian until he was on his deathbed. A man who spent his entire life as the high priest of Roman paganism, who kept pagan priests on his payroll, who built temples to pagan gods, is the man history credits with making Christianity the dominant religion of the West. That is not an accident. That is a strategy.
Let's talk about what Constantine actually needed. By 312 AD, he had won the civil war. He was emperor. But the empire was exhausted. 3 centuries of persecution had driven Christianity underground, and underground movements have a remarkable tendency to grow. By the early 4th century, somewhere between 10 and 15% of the Roman Empire identified as Christian. That's millions of people, organized, networked, committed, already dying for their beliefs. Constantine looked at that and saw not a threat, but a machine.
In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan. Christianity was no longer illegal. Every historian acknowledges this moment. What fewer people discuss is what Constantine got in return. The church, which had been scattered, persecuted, leaderless for 3 centuries, suddenly had imperial protection. imperial funding, imperial infrastructure. And in exchange, the church became the most effective administrative network the Roman Empire had ever seen. Constantine didn't convert to Christianity. He merged with it. The way a corporation acquires a startup, not because he believed in the product, but because he understood its market value.
And here is where it gets truly uncomfortable. Because Constantine didn't just legalize Christianity. He shaped it. He decided what it was, what it believed, who it worshipped. And he did this not from any theological conviction, but because a unified religion required a unified doctrine. A fractured church was useless to him. A church fighting itself about who Jesus was couldn't govern provinces, collect taxes, or keep populations obedient. He needed one church, with one story and one God. The specific argument tearing the church apart in the early 4th century was called the Arian controversy. On one side, Arius, a priest from Alexandria, who argued that Jesus was a created being. Divine, yes. Extraordinary, yes. But created by God. Not equal to God. Not eternal. Not coexistent with the Father. The Son of God, but not God himself. On the other side, Bishop Alexander and his deacon Athanasius, who argued that Jesus was fully divine, equal to God, co-eternal, of the same substance, not created, but begotten. These are not small theological differences. They are two completely different religions wearing the same name, and they were tearing the empire apart. Constantine's response was the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. 318 bishops summoned from across the empire. And here is what I need you to understand about this council. Constantine was not a theologian. He barely understood the argument. In one of his letters, his actual surviving letters, he called the dispute small and trivial. He didn't care who was right. He cared that one side won. Because a church with a settled argument is a church that can be controlled. A church still arguing is a church that can't be used. At the Council of Nicaea, the bishops debated, argued, and ultimately voted on the nature of Jesus Christ. The motion before the room: is Jesus of the same substance as God the Father? The result: 316-4. 2 against. Jesus was declared fully divine by a vote of 316-2. The losing position, Arianism, was declared heresy. Arius was exiled. His writings were ordered to be burned. Anyone found possessing them? Death. The deity of Jesus Christ, the central claim of Christianity, was decided in a room by a majority vote called by a pagan emperor who needed the argument to stop. Think about what that means. And here is the detail that history almost never mentions. Constantine wasn't even consistent about enforcing his own council. Within a few years of Nicaea, he recalled Arius from exile. He began favoring Arian bishops over Trinitarian ones. His own son, Constantius II, who succeeded him as emperor, was an Arian. The position declared heresy at Nicaea was the position of the imperial family for decades afterward. Constantine didn't call the council because he believed in the Trinity. He called it because he needed a decision. Any decision. Let's take stock of what Constantine actually built. In the span of roughly 25 years, he made Christianity legal. He funded the construction of churches across the empire, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem and the original St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. He moved the capital of the empire to Constantinople,
a city he named after himself, and made it the center of Christian civilization. He convened the council that settled Christian doctrine. He commissioned new copies of the Christian scriptures, copies produced under imperial authority. He gave the church legal powers. Bishops could now act as judges. Their decisions were binding in civil disputes. And he used the imagery of Christianity on his coins, his monuments, his military standards. He built the institution, the buildings, the doctrine, the legal power, the political infrastructure, everything the church would use to govern half the world for the next 1,000 years. He was baptized 13 days before he died. After a lifetime of building Christianity, he joined it at the very last moment, almost like he was hedging his bets.
Here is my thesis. Constantine did not save Christianity. He transformed it. He took a decentralized, persecuted, radically egalitarian movement, one that had survived 3 centuries precisely because it was underground, leaderless, and ungovernable, and he gave it power. Real power. Imperial power. And in doing so, he changed what it was. A religion built on the margins, on fishermen and tax collectors, on the poor and the outcast, became the official religion of the most powerful empire on earth. Whether that was a gift or a corruption depends entirely on what you think Christianity was supposed to be.
What I can tell you with certainty is this. The Christianity that existed before Constantine and the Christianity that existed after Constantine are not the same religion. Same name, same texts, mostly, same figure at the center, but different structure, different power, different relationship to the state, different relationship to violence, different relationship to money. Constantine didn't find Christianity, he finished it. That's the thesis. Think about it. Next time, the books that didn't make the cut, the Gospels that were read, revered, and then buried. And the man who decided which version of Jesus the world would remember.